What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Event Marketing Redefined. I am your host, Matt Kleinrock, CEO of Rockaway Exhibits and Events. Today, I have Nick Borelli with me. He is the marketing director at Zenus. And we are going to have a conversation around AI and the power of AI when it comes to events, trade shows, brand activations, all of the good face-to-face stuff. So, Nick, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Nick, so let's start with this. You recently taught a class 3-hour session at PCMA, and the title of the class was Enhancing Events with AI, and then kind of how to do it, right, as well, which I think is a good part of that. So give us a little bit on that class. Like, what's the cliff notes? Give me the main points on that class. I think it's a good start here.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on a 5-week course that I have with PCMA. So there's a lot of content out there. And the
Yep.
reason there's so much content is that unlike other technologies that have sort of emerged in maturity, is that AI isn't a technology. It's a layer to nearly every technology. So where do you begin when you say what we're doing is we're talking about everything? So you have to really start with a mindset first. And there's a lot of emotional resistance when it comes to the events industry with embracing technology, full stop. And I think the reason that is because I think event organizers have more to lose from failure than they do in winning wildly, being wildly successful. And it's kind of a bold statement, but like I really think that like winning just, in this sort of binary way of winning and succeeding in the single big metric, let's say tickets sold or this many retained or whatever, like the expectation. And it doesn't require wild swings. It basically says use the same playbook and put more energy into it year by year. And what that does is it creates tons of stress, and it makes the landing in a very small spot. So AI comes in and it gives a lot more depth and resources and time. On the other hand, it uncovers truths. It disrupts how you spend your time, and that disruption there's a tenuous sort of way that organizers work, and it's the devil they know, and AI is the devil they don't know. And these truths that it uncovers and the disruption of how they spend their time, less tactical, more strategic, more opportunities for big swings, like it's all kind of scary from an organizer who rarely is empowered as much as they should be. So it's a lot about emotional change. So I was showing every step of the way where this assistant comes in and does what I think is the silver bullet to the biggest pain points for organizers, which is lack of time and lack of resources. And really, this is resources and time wrapped up in a bow.
Interesting. So, okay. So tell me, lack of time, lack of resources. I like that. But let's go back to what you said prior about the more to lose versus winning. Take
Yeah.
me through that one more time.
Yeah.
Re-say
Yeah.
that, and then
Yeah.
take me through exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, so you have an event, and let's say you're an organizer and you need to sell 500 tickets, and you have a playbook that has routinely got you just about 500 tickets every single time, and that's sort of your focus, and that's the way you think. Now you could take some big swings and sort of change your marketing completely and go after groups you've never gone after before, although some of your energy would be split. And you might not get the people that you normally do because you're going after these opportunities, these kind of a bigger swing to divide your time to go after, growth. And that means that you could lose. So you don't. You kind of stick to the playbook, and maybe you get more time into it or you spend some more money, but ultimately you're still doing the same thing over and over again because it's kind of safe and what have you. Now, if let's say you do that thing, you take a big swing, you invest in, I don't know, a PPC campaign you've never done before, some partnerships, and you have to spend some money. Maybe you're taking from other budgets, or maybe you're spending more than you normally have, and you win. You sell 1,000 tickets. Now, what's next year look like for that organizer? Do they share necessarily in the spoils of that? Are they rewarded in a way that sales is rewarded? Are they rewarded in a way that gives them a bigger seat, more resources? In my experience, not really. What's expected next year is you got to sell 1,000 tickets. You might have the same resources that you did when you were trying to sell 500. Do more with less. Now, look, you could have done this. Why weren't you doing this before? So I don't know necessarily if things are as grim as that, but they're not too far off. So wildly succeeding has some drawbacks. Now, let's say you don't sell 500 tickets. You make those, you make those leaps, you swing for the fences, you sell 400 because your resources were split and you tried something. And now, by the way, in every other field, you learned something too, but we don't really think like that, generally speaking, in organizers. It's very linear. You had to get 500, you sold 400, the goal was one, you hit zero, you fail. And in that, your job's sort of on the line. And that's the real world ramifications of the idea of organizers being risk averse. And that's the foundation for a lot of decision making. They're just risk averse. AI comes in and says, look, we're going to tell you some things you didn't know. We're going to look at tons of data, be able to tell you that there's all these opportunities here, but they still require you to take some leaps and some jumps and test some things. Additionally, you're going to have to take your time, and you're going to see that you're going to shave off time here, shave off time there, and you're going to be aware of the fact that a lot of the time that you spend is been spent on things that can be done faster. What are you going to do with that time? And how is that going to, the expectation shift and maybe in the leadership of saying, can you do this with half the time? That's their fear. The reality is that they need to evolve to be something beyond that.
I think it's cool that we're having a conversation around AI, right? Obviously, it's a resource, it's a tool, it's a method of working, or it certainly will become, right? But some of the things that you're talking about, the more to lose versus more to gain is interesting, right? I think saying things like that event marketers have a lack of resources, lack of time, all true. And then I really like how you pointed towards the incentive idea, right? Like, okay, if I do get this event from 500 to 700, 800, and we convert X and this happens and the ROI and the measurement and this and that, like a lot of event marketers are really not treated that way. They're not incentivized that way. So essentially the status quo,
and digital doesn't think linear, right?
Exactly.
Digital doesn't put all the chips on red and hope that it comes up on red. What it does is it makes a small gamble. It watches, it learns, it determines, what factor got it to those numbers or whatever. And then it makes a split, and then it doubles down on what works, and it sort of cuts what does not. We don't think like that in an event. We put all of our reputation, who we are, our experience, all in one idea, one strategy, one way. And if it doesn't work out, it's an indictment of us. Now, there's no indictment of me as a digital marketer. If I put an ad that isn't successful, no one's like, you don't know what you're talking about. I just learned something.
You learn from it and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day. And
Gotcha.
some of it's part of events because events have a tight landing, like it's a very small spot. The event has to happen that day. Digital marketing is ongoing. So that's a constraint of what, I think is the foundation for all this linear thinking. Like when there's an end, i.e. the event, linear thinking is sort of obvious. However, if that's the only event you're ever going to do and you're never going to do anything other than that, I guess fair enough, it's linear. But that's not the case for the majority of people. You have annual events, you have lots of opportunities to exhibit, there's learn. And in the midst of an event, you can also take a pause and say, what can we learn now too?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about people that are like show organizers or event marketers who are hosting their own event, right? I mean, there's some pretty big host events, 500 people, 1,000 people, 3,000 people, for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
So how can these event marketers or these host organizers, how can they leverage AI? How can they actually actionable ways, simple ways of using it? Like, I don't know nearly as much as you do, but like my initial thought would be like, using an AI tool, talking to it to help you create the agenda, right? Like you're right. Like, so give me some examples, like, and for people who are listening to this to say, okay, I could use it this way. Here's some like simple applications.
Yeah, honestly, the simplest application for specifically generative AI in the planning phase of any event is to never come to a meeting with a blank page. Never come to a meeting where you're starting from scratch. Always come with something. Agenda one's a great example. You could use all of the factors that you know about your event, from previous agendas to hot topics to everything that you want to accomplish with this event, who the audience is. Dump all that in there and say, give me the ideal agenda for this many hours with this many breaks and this and that, and speak in natural language. You don't need to know how to use a program. And all of a sudden, you're going to get something that, in my opinion, I kind of describe it like this frequently, is you're going to get B+ material. And I think a lot of people without skills, without experience, like honestly, the new competition we haven't even competed against yet, that's going to be the market, right? There's going to be all these new players that are going to stop at B plus because that's all they really know. And they just put it in, they get this out and they say, this is what an event agenda is. For the rest of us that have experience, that are striving for, to be competitive, to be the best, that's where our meetings start. So our agendas start like that. Our menus, when we engage with a caterer, we don't come in with a blank piece of paper and say, what do you think this lunch should be? You run all these things in. Is it, does it meet my mission, vision, and values, or does it violate any of those things in the menu? It has to satisfy my mission, vision, and values. It also has to be low carbon footprint. It has to embrace the destination. It has to, be this. And also, by the way, you have to do the same thing for vegans, for this group, for this group, for that group. And then you bring that to the caterer and you say, we're going to start from here. Tell me what you think about this. And now you're starting the conversation at B plus. You're going to get to A plus because they're going to say, that makes me think of something that my grandma did and I really loved. And so they're going to put some heart and some soul into it. And maybe there's a story in there that you can incorporate in your marketing. And now you're having these next level conversations that you wouldn't have had if you had to start with like, what do you think we should have for lunch?
Yeah.
So every meeting is like that. Production is like that. If you're talking to your AV team, you can look at what you've done in the past, what the redundancies that you never needed to use from a budgetary standpoint. I mean, you can look at a lot of different data points, and you can also ask like, what's hot right now? Analyze these photos and say like, what am I looking at here? Like lots of different opportunities for you to leverage generative AI to take you from starting a meeting with a blank piece of paper, but starting from a much further ahead.
And is it accurate to say, I mean, okay, so you started by saying that a lot of event planners, event marketers, they have a lack of time, right? So this
Totally.
using AI as a tool to be able to go, you're working on ChatGPT or whichever tool saying, hey, you're an event planner and you're planning an event for engineers and the event is in Nashville and you give it all of the information almost as if it's like another person, like an intern that's essentially doing the work, right?
Great way to put it.
That's doing the work for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're then, by the way, I stole that intern thing I stole from a podcast that I listened to about AI because I was trying to educate myself, but it is a good example, right? It's saying, hey, you're telling AI, you're an event planner. The event's in Nashville. The event is for mid-level engineers. And then you start detailing as much detail as you can. And you say,
drop
hey,
URLs of other places that have
put together an agenda for
those.
the day.
Yeah. I mean, imagine starting from that spot. And then also like, look at all this content that engineers are writing. Like what's the hottest topic right now? All of these things like, and you could design differently and say, I'm going to design most of my show 6 months, 8 months ahead of time. I'm going to leave 10% of it to the last, month, which sounds absolutely terrifying to most organizers. However, if you've got ability to source these topics really quickly, you can get whatever, especially in industries with lots of technology, that there's some topic that came up in the last month. It's actually what people are talking about right now, but because you program 6 or 7 months out, you missed that. Now you have the opportunity to source what that hot topic is, who those hot presenters are, using social listening tools with AI. I mean, everything becomes fresher and more potent.
Would an idea be to be able to go, using an AI platform, asking about trends, right? You could say, hey, you're hosting an event in Napa. What are the trends going on in the wine industry? What are having that discussion to drag that out to be able to get creative with ideas, with agenda.
Opposite.
I love
what's overdone.
I love what you said about menu. Menu is a great example, right?
Yeah, BEOs you can start at the next level, right? Like there's a lot of variables in there. And like this is the example I frequently give when I'm presenting on this topic because I can always find one in the group. And I ask somebody who here is vegetarian or vegan, and inevitably I get one. And then I confirm something that I'm always sure is the case. Have you ever sat down at a 72-inch round and the other 9 people get plated before you and you're waiting and you say, go ahead and eat, it's fine, I'll wait. And inevitably you get that plate down and it's 3 sides, right? So everyone was intentionally designed for, except for you. You feel left out. You don't have a sense of belonging. Your ability to be changed, which is the mission of the event, is compromised. And you don't do it right now. If AI says, I want to make sure that everything that was in these menus from a design standpoint, all the things that we care about, like the message we're trying to, underline with this menu and with everything, is also met with this group. You see that inclusion isn't not happening in events, in my opinion, because designers or planners don't care It's because they don't have time and resources, right? Like they're just designing for the middle because it's faster and it's easier, because that's all they can do. Now you have all these, further groups out that have not been designed for because you didn't say, now how would this impact? And you could do that with content. How does this impact the CEO? Would this be something? How would you make this that would be interesting to them too? Then you could start looking at different groups, and asking yourself these questions. That sort of dialogue, that feedback loop that you can have with yourself, but the other person is AI, is pretty fun. Like that's honestly the thing that I use it for the most.
Give me another really good nugget. I like how when you talked about your class, right? You had a 3-hour session at PCMA. There's a lot of content behind it. I love how you talked about the emotional aspect, getting people to shift, getting people to move, getting people to what are the roadblocks and reasons in their own mind where they're saying, I'm not going to use that, right? What are the fears? I love that piece. But what are some other main pillars inside of that content that you taught?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the main pillar inside of that is the break from linear thinking and to embrace iterative thinking. And it's just hardwired into everything that we do as organizers. And that means that you have to design with forks in the road. You have to design not to say, I'm doing this because I think this is the best way to do it, because I know it's the best way to do it. And then your biases come in, you start to shape what you see to support yourself in order to make it seem like, you were right and you're on defensive mode. It's bad ways to design. So like the idea would be to say, and an example would be, I'm going to have a booth, but in this booth on this side, I'm going to have a salesperson who's going to go with this methodology. They're going to try to have longer conversations. This one is going to have shorter conversations. I'm going to look at both of those. I'm going to look at their lead gen and I'm going to say which works. And this is not for today. This isn't putting all my chips on one thing. This is for me to know moving forward, organizational wide. This event is a focus group now. What works, right? So thinking along those lines of experimentation should be exciting, and it should be something that marketers generally get, capital M marketers get. But when it comes to events, it's frequently not done in that methodology. So like that's something that I have to get people over to say.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is like I think the carrot at the end of this is to say you're going to learn some things that are going to be bigger than just ways to make your event or your booth or whatever better. You're going to have information that's going to be able to impact your entire organization. So if you fail or whatever, let's say half of it, doesn't work the way you thought it would, but the other half does. Now you can say, look, I'm going to ensure that the next event we do is better, but also I know more about our clients now. I know more about our leads now. I know more about this community now. And here's how it could impact our content marketing. Here's how it could impact our sales drips. Like thinking organizational wide, thinking about how the fact that you're running, no matter what you're doing in a live experience, and this is something that it's not so obvious, it's really a focus group. Like in digital, we get people to do this, to click on stuff. Very easy to get you to go one way or the other way. And we look at that heavily. In the live events, we get people to put a burden on their spouse to have to watch the kids for a couple of days, to get in a plane that's just uncomfortable, to eat food you don't like, to wake up early, to stay up, and to have your emails not get done. That's a lot of friction, and they still come. So these people are the archetypes. These people are, the people who really want to be here. So what are they doing? Pay attention to what they're doing and offer opportunities to have them go left or right at every moment, and then measure which way they go and who goes which way in order to make bigger truths uncovered.
Let's talk a little bit about measurement, actually, right? Because I believe that one of the biggest problems plaguing the event world is lack of data, lack of measurement. And I think those two things lead to uninformed decisions, lack of strategic approach. The event world has plenty of what I would call survey data.
Yeah.
Right?
Anecdotal.
Plenty of it. Where we lack is, I don't want to call it like in the moment or like
passive,
quantitative data. Yep. I don't really know exactly how to say it, but you had mentioned A/B testing, right? I am a huge believer from I would say specifically from, just specific trade shows standpoint, that you need to be adjusting your approach at all times. Does this work? No, move it, switch it, change it. That works, move it, switch it. Because you're going to get results. You're going to engage the customer. So talk to me a little bit about through tech, AI, and be specific on which parts, how it gets used, and then sort of how you can A/B test, how you can create your own data to then create more informed decisions.
Yeah, I mean, even going into the prep of like, let's say, like the trade show, of being able to have a conversation with in role play at a booth setting, you could do the entire setting and you can get your personas and put your persona in there and say like, why have this person be resistant to working with me, and have a role play discussion to like increase the potency of what your script will be in your booth. So like it even start at that level, prior to getting there from an event marketer standpoint. But I look at the linear thinking as an example of like what's not working in trade show booths as if my goal is to get 30 leads and that's my only goal and I get 29, I failed. Next year I have two choices. I either pull out of that show because it's a bad show, it's a zero from 1 to 0, or I create a whole new design for the booth and strategy and I take another guess completely and it's just as likely to fail as before. So utilizing AI, you have the opportunities to look at both registration information to get a better idea of who's coming. Every one of those shows gives you a prospectus that will tell you more about who is coming there in order for you to determine where these people are going, what kind of content are they reading, like what are they hungry for. These are all things that you can prepare better for as opposed to just taking your educated guess or going from what you did the previous year and say, all right, and how do I have a dialogue with what these people need? Like, how do they make decisions, right? Like, and look at that in your design all the way through. But this idea of like having a goal that is just one number and saying pass fail is bad for the organizer, it's bad for the exhibitor, it's bad for the attendee. It's just a bad ecosystem. And even the generative AI as a use case for you to have these dialogues to enhance your design for your messaging, to look at your data on your website to determine like what has the longest dwell rates that you can look at within specific groups of people. Like these are all ways that you can have a better messaging. And then on top of that, I mean, email automation can be done with generative AI too to make your follow-ups even better. But then there's technology. I mean, like I work for a company that is in booths and, we look at, more data beyond just the one single metric leads generated to be able to provide you a little bit more clues. Honestly, RFID has the ability to do that too. There's just some lift issues associated sometimes with that. But all of these things are opportunities, even voting within the booth, right? Like your opportunity, if they made it this far, they did all those things I just mentioned, the plane, the whole thing, they got up to your booth, you were on the list, and you're not collecting information around like what their preferences are when you have them, like having a simple, even one question, SMS, QR code, whatever else, you win an iPad to be able to answer a single question. What would have got you to, buy this today or something maybe less specific than that. These are all opportunities every step of the way is data collection, and you can sort all those things. Even that anecdotal post-event survey data you said has value if you can sort through it. Like I take Excel spreadsheets of all of that data, I drop it in and I say, okay, organize this by functions of events, meaning all the information around the keynote speech, all the information about the networking, et cetera. So I do that. I also say, what are the highest sentiment words associated with this? Show me the highest negative sentiments. And it looks through all that nonsense. Usually it's about like dry chicken and things that don't matter. But like, I just really care about this, or like bottom line, or this is my mission. Where did we fail our mission? Where did we hit our mission? What are my opportunities to the least amount of money to make improvements? What are the personas that need the most amount of work? Like taking that in there, even at any level of what you're doing, survey people who are attending when your lead generation at your booth. I mean, in the exhibitor side, also send them a survey about their experience at the booth. Like, don't be scared to find out information, because I think we don't ask questions a lot of times because we don't want to know the answers, or it's not that we don't want to know the answers. We just don't want to be proven that we're wrong. And it's that.
Or what are you going to do with it once you have it? Because once you have it,
too much
your
information.
hand gets drawn to be able to do something. Nick, say I was a event marketer. I work for a corporate company, right? And I'm in charge of my company's trade shows, the host event, activations, executive dinners. I'm running all these things year round. And I know you personally, and I say, Nick, I want you to consult me. I need help. Where would you start with me, right? Like if I say, I don't know anything about AI, I don't know how to apply it to my job, to my company, to our trade show booths, our events. How would you consult me? How would you help me? Where would you have me start? What would be ground level for me?
Yeah, I mean, if it's list building from not just lists of cities or whatever, but lists of finding commonalities between groups of people. If you're going to put together dinners, or if you're going to put together smaller engagements, who is talking the most. You can drop 100 LinkedIn accounts and say who is, like, what are the topics that are
When you
rising in
say
here.
when you say drop in, what
Yeah,
does
yeah. You
that
can
mean?
cut and paste that into like a ChatGPT and say, here's 50 LinkedIn's, sort these by their hottest interests, the interests that are the most meaningful
Okay.
to those people.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're putting together a group of people who likely would get along together really well, or the people that, or their seniority or industry or whatever criteria you want. And then all of a sudden you're list building in a way that's more meaningful for you to create connections with people that would want to be together. And therefore your ability to create these like small dinners or things like that become more valuable. Or the most active people on there, and then you determine, well, if they're the most active, they're probably people that are uh, maybe more interested in what they're doing, or they're not just sort of coasting, and they're whatever, that's a persona that's interesting to you. So like that stuff is really interesting. I find that a lot of the AI technology, or generative AI specifically, technologies are good for increased potency of messaging. So you can keep iterating on your messaging to say, get it more concise, get it more, tell me why somebody wouldn't like this, then what are the flaws in this, and just get it better and better and better. So like your messaging for those people ends up being a lot better. I
So you're
use
saying on that specifically. Well, let's go back. I like what you said about the dinner thing, right? So say I'm hosting a dinner and it's for a bunch of, we'll say, heart surgeons, right? I mean,
Sure.
you can take those people from LinkedIn, you can put them into a ChatGPT, right? You can then type in there, you're an event planner, you're hosting a dinner for 15 surgeons, right? Create a menu, create a activity that we would do after, and that would be one way that you're saying would be an easy
Yeah, even
no-brainer
the
for someone to
menu.
start.
Totally. Everything would be, speak to them specifically, right? So you can say,
Yep.
create a menu where every menu item has a tie to their profession, speaks to heart, and then extrapolate. Why did you choose what you did? So then you can say thoughtfully why you chose everything that you did. You could say, what are the hottest topics for this group? What are they
Yeah.
sharing the most, et cetera? And every level of this becomes something that has a level of personalization. In that intern scenario, you could do that too. It just takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And now you're getting there, and now you can take it to someone that goes one step further and take it from that B plus to an A plus, because again, everything I just mentioned is current state. It's technology that exists today. Anyone has access to that. So like my other thing I'm trying to
Yeah.
tell a lot of people is if you don't do that, you're sort of you could struggle and maybe get to that B plus. That's where everyone else is starting. The opportunity for innovation happens after that. True creativity, and that's the separation of like the question I get asked probably the most is, all right, all this horsepower that exists, all this intelligence with AI, where are we going to sit? And
Yep.
that to me ends up being, right now, my working hypothesis is true human creativity, meaning like doing something no one's ever done before, combining things that never been combined for something that's never been done. Empathy, probably the most important, and humanizing everything that you do and making it, rooted in humanity. So I think we're going to have a sixth sense for content and things that are created on AI, and we're just eventually going to get numb to it, that doesn't have some human component into it. And lastly, that domain expertise, like the things that we say in events. I could say Pantone color of the year, Shivari, BEO, wiping things down for viruses. I could say all these, crazy disparate things that you'd be like, did you know that's all our language? Like we have to all think about things like that. But, surgeons wouldn't. And they would have different terminology, different acronyms of all the acronyms that we have. So that understanding of like what's true in this world, like being able to go back and forth and sort of read a room, we're really good at that too. So if you do that, and your audience and your community really well, you're extremely creative because you're doing things that no one's ever done before, and you're doing all that with a sense of empathy. The AI sits there to get you to that point where you can start doing that work. Because otherwise, you're list building and you're menu creating and all that other stuff that you're starting from
Yeah.
scratch on. You don't have time to do it.
It sounds to me like the way I view it is, for a lot of people, AI is going to be like, and this might be a bad way of view, like analogy, but it's like the new Excel. You have to
Yeah.
learn how to use it to do your job. It will become mandatory to do your job. You'll have to be able to use it. So I think that's a good piece there. The second is, I love what you're saying about like the B plus to an A. Like what you're doing is you're using AI to speed things up, to give you a foundation to then go create from, right?
Yeah.
You're creating off of what it's giving you. It's not
Yep.
going to give you the big idea. It's not
Nope.
going to give you the connecting of the dots because it's only going off of information that's already available. It then allows you to then potentially be creative and go connect the dots. I think visually there's some interesting things going on. I was using a tool the other day, talking to it and taking a picture of my backyard and the porch, having it transform it and show me what the options are. Cause I don't even know where to begin. Right.
I'm like that
So,
with my car. A certain light
yep.
came on. I took a picture of it with DALL-E, and I was like, "What's wrong with my car?" In that language, and it was like, "It's
Wow.
this."
I mean,
I
yeah,
found
like,
Waldo once. I was like, "Where's Waldo?"
yeah, that's pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
then I love the other piece that you said about messaging, right? I'm a huge believer that when it comes to events, when it comes to trade shows, you know, as a host, as a trade show manager, whatever it is you're doing, one of the biggest questions you have to ask yourself is, what is the message I want to convey to my customer, to
Yeah.
my audience? And I think AI is now a tool to be able to do that. And I would even, just as I'm talking this through with you, I'm even thinking further of like, part of the problem that event people have is at their core, they're not marketers.
I agree.
So
They're
they have to go
hospitality
through
people, in my opinion.
Yeah, they are.
They're
Planners, they're
people.
hospitality. Yes, it's completely different. So
and those are
they're having to get the messaging from marketing.
Totally. Those are great skills, by the way. I think that like the translation, the most exceptional experiential organizers or planners are the ones that speak a little bit of marketing, but they're different languages. And being able to even translate what you do in the form of KPI and say, look, I know that this dinner with prime rib is better than if it was with chicken. Put this in terms that a CMO, or better yet, a CFO would recognize, right? And it's like, it would say, well, look at your data to be able to tell you that what your customer lifetime value is, or your sales cycle gets shortened for attendees who have had the opportunity to have beef. Like, even if you say you're going into your event with that mindset, like, I'm going to track this moving forward of this, dinner, whatever we went with, the heightened dinner versus the medium dinner. And then I'm going to track to see if my sales cycle is days, weeks, whatever shorter, or if there's an increased, amount of trust that shows up in customer lifetime value. Look, I'm using terms that they appreciate and they respect, and they might be listening now. And I think that they don't listen sometimes to organizers in the C-suite because the terminology is sort of soft. It was a good event. It's just soft, sort of nothing language. It's right. You just got to prove it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes me think about is like, if you're hosting a dinner, if you're hosting a fireside chat, if you're doing something as a part of your event or whatever it may be, those dinners and those events are going to look different for a group of 20 engineers versus 20 maybe event marketers. Event marketers are just going to, in general, be more outgoing. It's a different vibe, different energy. So you're able to use this information to come up with ideas to sort of outlay what things should look like in a more relative manner is maybe the term, right? Meaning having things make sense. Like, it's going to look different for a bunch of surgeons. I mean, surgeons are just quirky, weird cats. They just are. I mean, I've met a ton of their.
It's crazy.
It's how it works.
They're very different in events. And like, I have the opportunity to look at back end data of like room energy of different industries as they consume content and in real world settings. And surgeons specifically are ones where we've been looking at the data, and there's a common belief that the shorter the session, the higher energy, the more people are with it. Turns out, at least so far in our experience, interacting with this audience, they love a 2-hour session. Their energy levels are sustained so much longer. You see dips in energy as things go on in other arenas. They're like all in for 2 hours because what they do is so nuanced and they're so geared towards deep learning that they're different personas. So treating everybody the same because you don't have enough data is a huge flaw too.
I mean, just imagine that same 2-hour session with a bunch of CEOs and entrepreneurs. I mean, you'd lose them.
15 minutes
gone. And yes, they're gone. They're on another planet. They're in their phone.
Emails are getting done.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Completely different. Tell me a little bit about, right? So you are the marketing director for Zenus.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to sit here and pitch you guys, but I think the product is so worth talking about because of the application of
Yeah,
it.
we're the only ones doing it.
Um,
So as far as a pitch is concerned, I always feel pretty
yeah,
good about the fact that I'm not
good.
saying like we're better than, A or B or C. We're the only ones doing this. So it is an
Yeah.
innovation unto itself.
So tell me a little bit about Zenus and exactly what it's doing from like A/B testing, dwell rates, impressions, the facial analysis in terms of like, are people in a good mood? Are they not? I mean, I think that stuff is so cool when it comes down to events.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, what we just do is we empower organizers or we empower marketers or we empower anyone at any level, GCs, anyone to uncover hidden truths. That's the big deal is that I've been saying a lot about the idea that, you put everything on one metric and you either pass, fail. The reality is that there's sometimes usually only one small problem you have to fix. Right now it's like going to a doctor and saying I don't feel well, and then him for making a prognosis off of just that, right? You don't have enough data to be able to say it's actually just here and you just circle this element. So I can give you a little story that's interesting. It's practical, happened in real life. A pivot that took place at a trade show in the middle of the trade show at the end of day one that impacted days 2 and 3. 40 by 40 booth, completely closed in. All you can see of this booth of what's happening is one window. In that window looking in, it looks like a house, but all you can really see is people doing yoga. You have the opportunity. It's a technology company. They want to show their whole idea, their design hypothesis, their guess, their work was all, we're going to show each and every room of how this piece of technology fits in. So people were making their estimation as to what this was about with the only information that they had, which was people doing yoga. Day one, at the end of the day, they looked at like, we just didn't get as many people as we thought. It's just maybe this show isn't working out. Maybe this is a bad show. Maybe our message was bad. That's all you got without data. Now we had
Yeah.
cameras all over the place and we were able to see the outside perimeter, the inside perimeter, and what we were able to discover pretty quickly because, and I can get into this a little bit later as to how it happens, but I'll tell you the upshots is that 70% of the people who came into this space were women and only 30% men. Now, this is a technology show. That's way out of whack with the overall show demographics. So they had, and I think a lot of times with booths, I think, or even events in general, I think in website terms, maybe because that's where I started in web design when I was a teenager. That's a high bounce rate for males, right? So
Yep.
why, and so then now I know where to look, like the doctor, you're circling just the elbow and then they can use their expertise and say, well, geez, I mean, I guess all they can see is this yoga. Maybe not everybody, maybe some men don't like yoga. And with their design bias, a bunch of people in Silicon Valley, they were like, everybody I know likes yoga. They had this bias and they didn't
Yeah.
know that. And if I'm a dude in Midwest, I see yoga and if I get down in that, I'm never going to get back up again. I'm not going into your booth. Right. And I actually would have been a consumer, right? That was
Yeah.
so here's without data, without what we're doing, here's what they're faced with. They either pull out of the show, it was not a good show for us, didn't get as many, people as they thought they would, or they say, let's try something completely new next year, which is a whole new guess, just as likely to fail. So day one, at the end of the day, they look at this and they're like, what if we just move that mat to the back and put something else up front? And that's what they did. And they had a 300% increase in
Wow.
impressions the following day with a dwell rate, which is another metric that we do of 30 seconds or higher, meaning we got more people coming in and they stuck around. And that leads to, as any other funnel would know, higher lead generation, more brand goals, more impressions. And that was moving a mat, right? So without knowing that, without
Give the
knowing
people
where to
what
look,
they want,
yeah,
right?
pay attention,
Give the
listen to
people
them.
what they
Data
want.
is listening. Like
Yeah.
it's just, they're telling you things. Like they're saying, ugh, I don't like this. But you don't know that because you're not listening, because you're not collecting data. So that's all really we're doing is that we're giving you a little bit more of a focus on where to go. And we can do that for booths, we can do that for sessions. We have a thing
Yeah.
where we can look at sentiment analysis, and that's something that's unique to what we do.
I like that example that you just gave because I think sometimes people, it always goes back to who is your audience? What are the demographics? What do they like? Like, we're constantly having these discussions with our clients. It's amazing. Sometimes people don't dive really into the depths of it, but maybe something just as simple as male and female. Where is it skewed? It's like if
It
you
could have
were going to
been
go with
something
this,
else. Yeah,
yeah, I
it
mean,
just
if you're going to
happens
go
to
with
be
this
that.
enclosed room,
Yeah,
why not have two rooms?
right.
Right now, you're talking A/B testing. Now
See,
you have the
now
cameras on the outside. Now you have the cameras on the inside.
you're doing it.
Maybe the other room is a golf simulator.
See, now you're
right?
doing it. So you're
Yep.
being creative, you're using empathy, and you're using the experience that you have at events right now. So, like, that's what you bring to the table, augmented with AI. So, AI gives you something to think about. It's not
Yep.
giving you the answers. All the things that you know as someone who's been in events and has, been experiences, it's just spurring you and it's inspiring you
Yeah.
to come up with the actual solutions. And that's where AI sits in all of this stuff, right? It's pinging you and to get you thinking in the right direction. And then all those ideas you had, the golf simulator, okay, let's do that the next time. Try that out, see if that works. Did that not work for women? Maybe if there was this cocktail that might bring them in. And so it just constantly learning, constantly getting better, knowing where to look, being creative, empathizing with.
Yeah.
That's the system.
Yeah. Utilizing having information to then be creative, to make adjustments, to make decisions. It's more informed. Is it a perfectly informed decision? No, but it is way better informed than the way it's been done. Because some people, I know just from being in or around events, at trade shows, at activations outside, ones that we've put on, ones that we've created where I've been, I am looking around at people's faces. I'm looking around. Are people walking in? Are they not? Are they standing back? Are they confused? Like, what is happening? You have to be very intuitive to watch those things. And sometimes you could be the most intuitive person in the world. You're still not getting the full story.
And you can't scale that, right? So, like, I used to do that, I mean, at
No.
events frequently, is I'd go out at events and I would, like, I did event strategy, and once I was done with my strategy, I didn't have to actually be at the events, but I went to them. I didn't
Yeah.
wear a lanyard, or I wore a lanyard that said something vague, and I just did people watching, and I was
Yeah.
seeing, what are people taking pictures of, like, that means to me that's something that's
Yeah.
impact. I had all these, like, anecdotal, but I'm telling you, it didn't scale well. Like, if there was 1,000 people at that, I just saw anecdotes, and I was another anecdote, element into that, but, like, I didn't really give it. And AI has the ability to see all the faces and give you a median aggregate score of what that's actually doing in that sort of, and I think it's augmented with the passive, like, or the anecdotal. I think the anecdotal is still valuable. Like, I'm not saying we replace the post-event survey. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if your single metric of truth is that, it's wanting in the same ways that you said, as far as it's not really passive and conclusive and all those good things. It punctuates things. But if someone says
Yeah.
a certain word in those surveys, like, this embarrassed me, I go, whoa, that's a big word, and
Yeah.
it stops me in my tracks. And then if I look at the numbers and I'm like, yeah, those numbers were really low, and I had that word, I'm like, this is a real problem. So having a single source of truth isn't really that great, but that's really mostly all we've had. We've had, sort of one metric, post-event surveys, as far as our data source, and in B2B events, frequently it's just like, it lives and dies off either tickets sold or leads generated, and it's not enough depth.
Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, just as you're talking through this, if say you're hosting an event, I'm an event marketer, I'm hosting an event, I got my user summit. I mean, I would have these cameras all over the place, because then when I'm done, I'm understanding, where did people stop? Where did they stay? Where were they in the best mood? Where was there the most engagement? Which pieces didn't? Did I create a lounge this year because the feedback was people didn't have places to go work, right? Okay. Did that work? Did it not work? Was the setup good? Like, there's so much you could draw from that.
Yeah.
And then
We
I'm
had one
thinking
with
the other
Google.
piece.
They
Go
they
ahead.
wanted to see, they knew that there's a real burden when it comes to attending multi-day conferences, of being on all the time, and, like,
Yeah.
on is registered as positive sentiment that is
Oh yeah.
sustained for long periods of time. So they created spaces where people could be by themselves and not be seen, to take a
Oh
break.
yeah.
Now, we measured that,
I've
and we
gone
were
back up
looking
to
for
my
troughs.
room
I do it all the time. I
at my
just
own
need to
event. I've
be
gone back and forth for
reset.
20 minutes.
Yep.
20 minutes. I brush
Huge.
my teeth.
Isn't it good?
I
Love it.
it's excellent,
Yeah.
because you need it.
Yeah.
It's a good example.
It's a recharge, right? So in that instance, it's like, okay, is there an amount of being on too long that is bad for people? Because when you're like that, you're not as receptive, and you don't have the same, like, energy level that,
Yes.
or listening. So you're not making business connections. You're not remembering key points that are being made. Like, the whole point of the event is actually diminished, because we're trying to shotgun, because we don't know you well enough, right? So we try to give you every session, every idea, every distraction all at once. Boom, find it yourself, right? The
Yeah.
more we get to know people, and AI's big future, I think, is going to be in matchmaking. You're going to
Mhm.
attend event, it's going to know
Oh
enough
wow.
about
Yeah.
you, and the ROI of events could increase fivefold, because you're going to meet right now.
Yeah.
serendipity is the engine, I think, that runs the ROI. Maybe you're a prepared mind, so you make better luck, you're good at networking, etc. I guess, but like no one's fully optimized. But if you had the five people you were supposed to meet, the five sessions you were supposed to go to, the five booths that you were supposed to visit based on all the information it has on you, and it keeps learning about you and saying that wasn't that great, etc. And there's more apps that incorporate this technology now than there ever has been, and then it's just early into this. That's going to be the future of events. It's going to be a guaranteed higher ROI proposition on attending events. Like everyone's going to
Yeah.
expect. And, I go to an event right now, a couple days, really like a conference. If I meet three really great people that I think I have opportunity, that's a pretty good event. That's pretty low ROI considering all the burden I had to do that. Could I have stayed
Yeah.
home? And this is what everyone who doesn't attend your events thinks. Could I make a bunch of calls? Could I do this? Would it be just as good? But if
Do a
you
couple
knew,
webinars. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But
Yep.
if you
Yep.
knew that these were going to be impactful experiences based on all the data of what your preferences are, that's going to be really probably the most valuable thing. So if we pay more attention and we start having this matchmaking at every level of events, events are going to
Yeah.
be much more potent.
It's a really good point you just made there. It's reducing that networking curve, right? You have extroverts, you have introverts, you have people that know how to work a room. They know how to work a conference, how to work an industry. They know how to get, they're not afraid to ask, hey, can you introduce me to Jeff? I don't know him. I know
They're
you know him. And then there's
totally.
people that won't ask that. There's people
Ex-
that won't ask that to get navigated, whereas some
Our
type of
CEO isn't
AI
like that.
may
I'm
do it
like
for
that.
you. Yeah.
Totally. Like our
Yeah.
CEO
There
is
you
not
go.
like that. He's not going to work a room. He's not going to do any of that stuff. By the way, he's a PhD in mathematics, super smart guy, often the smartest person in the room. But he's not built like that. So I'm in middle. I can't make the deals he could make. I can't have the level that somebody would want to have
Yep.
because I'm built as one of those people. I could talk to a valet for an hour. It doesn't matter. I could talk to
Yeah.
anybody. It's no big deal. But it ends up being middle management doing middle management's kind of like dance, and that's the exclusive that we have. Meanwhile, people at the bottom who have all this energy and new ideas, they're not cross-pollinating those new ideas because they're not as good as networking because they are not connecting with people like them, creating their own energy, creating their own, disruptions to industries. Like it's
Yep.
just not happening. So all this stuff is just really lowered, and AI is going to make that really, really simple because it's going to take everything that is, you and what you like, and it's going to find more people that like what you like, and you're going to be connected with those people, and you're gonna pay double for a ticket and do it happily because you're going to get triple the ROI.
That's a big one right there. Talk to me a little bit about, I'm thinking in terms of trade shows, right? I'm thinking my clients, I'm thinking the exhibits and the experiences that we design for them. And I think a simple application here is essentially, say I have a software company and say that in a 30 by 30 space for them, we are now going to design in two different demo areas, right? One demo area is going to be one-on-one, private, this intimate experience. Another area is going to be more of a multiple person room, right? More where you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, maybe a whiteboard in there, like a think tank area with a
Experiential.
demo. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a little,
Yeah.
but two different
Longer.
experiences in the
Yep.
same exhibit. And I'm going to put these cameras in there. And then they are going to be able to tell me which room works better, which
Yeah.
room potentially is a better use. I may leave that conference saying, hey, both of these work for two separate crowds. We're going to keep this up.
Yep.
Or the group one is way better. And in terms of the space that we have and optimizing our 3 days, the space that we have and the money that we have, we're going to go with 2 group rooms versus the smaller rooms.
Yeah, you could pivot the next day even to add another element or, keep figuring out what depending on like how much those hours are, valuable to you. But in any kind of iteration, what you're going to end up with is something that is more valuable than just how to make that booth better. You're also going to know what these people prefer as far as experiences in general, right? So you're going to know maybe it's the content that's the variable in there. And then you can say, your sales team could say 80% of the people that we engage with at this session really appreciated this style of content. So I'm going to provide this to you as a synopsis, because you missed us there, to these people. And then they know, this is how you activate them. This is what they're craving. This is what they're missing. That kind of stuff is super important. So it's not just like, I think that's a big value of like, how do you get a bigger seat at the table? How do you add more value to your like this hypothetical technology company? Like they now can add that into, maybe it's even the experience of like where the questions are and considered R&D as well. and add more product marketing style videos within the process to be able to anticipate the questions that were asked ahead of time too. So seeing where you lose people, seeing who you lose at what
Yep.
times, super valuable. And then also like being able to tie that into the overall like leads and the types of leads they are. Like you could find out that this longer experience resulted in less leads, but those leads ended up being more valuable. Well, then you'd wonder
Yeah.
why. Then you're like, oh, it's just these types of people. Like it's these big buyers. They take more time. They have a longer buying cycle. However, they're worth more. So even though we get less of them from a profitability standpoint, you don't know what to look for, but you have to think along those lines of just not, this was better than that. A/B, it's more of like, okay, let's go one step further. Why did it, what worked? Is there lessons that could be applied to other elements of the business? Like that sort of inquisitive
Yeah.
curiosity. And hopefully if you're using AI to make our emails, draft them faster and organize data quicker and all the sort of tactical stuff that AI does, hopefully this affords us the time to be more thoughtful and more curious about these things, because like that's how we're going to get higher than we've ever got.
Love it, man. This is good stuff. I'm going to cut us off here. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this stuff. I think it's such
Yeah.
a good topic. I know getting into the applications of it, I think is so important. I really hope we were able to, do that today. How can people find you? Where can they look up content of yours? Where can they kind of see what you're talking about to, keep up with you on this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I have like an incredibly deep dive that gets into like product demos and use cases for events at every phase of event. Like we didn't even get into like AI that is used for things like, translation and, all that. There's an AI for everything. So I have a course with an organization called Event Leadership Institute. That's something where I do the super deep dive I think it's like every 2 months, I have a different cohort for that. And then I have like an hour long, once a week wrap session with students on that. I speak all over the place. My LinkedIn, which is just Nick Borelli, easy to find. You can see all the places that I present there. And then Zenus.ai is everything that we're doing in the facial analysis realm in order to empower organizers to ask these better questions and to, have deeper learnings.
Super cool, man. Thanks for being here. This was a great conversation. My brain's turning now. I'm thinking maybe you and I find some time to do something where, what we were talking about with like ChatGPT and these prompts, maybe doing like some kind of screen share thing where
Sure.
maybe we do a live show. I get some of our event marketers to come on and we work through it. We screen share, we talk to it, we tell it to build stuff out. I think that could be super cool and really valuable because I do think that people are afraid to dive into this and they don't know how, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a blank line,
It
right?
is.
So like
it's not easy. No, it's not easy. I'm not like an expert at all, but I am trying. I am trying to find ways, and I want to see for our community how to use it.
Yeah, experts are only a couple months ahead of everybody, so it's not a chasm, and really like you learn by doing. If you want to learn how to do ChatGPT for your role, go to ChatGPT and say, "This is my role. How should I be using you?" Like have that dialogue, but just consider it that it's like your assistant. It's in the room, and you tell it what you want it to do. Anything, and it will tell you. It'll start a conversation.
Awesome, Nick. Thanks for being here, man. Everybody, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to another episode of Event Marketing Redefined. We will catch you next time. Appreciate it.